biology. So if you want to render that, if you want this asteroid to be converted into basic elements and built in structure, you would dispatch a kind of light, and it would be a kind of light that uses solar energy, and the code is the light, and it occupies that space and it starts to manufacture, to absorb the asteroid. And then it produces pollen, which goes out, and it's networked pollen. It's in the Oort cloud as premium isis. And then life is off the Earth, and it's a very different kind of life. It's certainly not sentient life, but it's very effective. Some of the spores that get sort of stuck in the interstellar space eventually. Of course, you need atoms, at least as far as we know, to actually have a matrix to live in. Are they very ordered atoms? So in the long view, it's we're the ladder that life is trying to climb out. And along the way, we'll get great terraformers that will make lots of living space outside the Earth.
But do you think, you don't sound like you're of the school that thinks that we're close to some kind of AI, and that when it goes over the threshold within a matter of hours, it will just inflate into some kind of thing that we can't even relate to, and you'll be of no interest to?
No, I think, of course, it's hard, once they find intelligence and consciousness. I think that people underestimate the trial and error, the error proneness of living processes.
But on the other hand, the iteration speed of these machine life is so fast.
But there's a difference. The ecosystems that they're living in are extremely arid. They're basically life living in these very narrow tubes connected by very chancy processes.
In the wires.
The wires, and the servers and things. That's how it stays. And whereas an ocean with a billion trillion parallel processes and black smokers and super plumes going up and carrying hydrogens is a massively different ecosystem, where you can have a lot of things happening at once on the same beast, a lot of reactions that happen at the same time. And I think the error rate is always the crippling factor. Why, for instance, did we invent, all the science fiction, we invent something that eats all silicon, and it comes down to the Earth and it eats all carbon-based life, and we're all gone. And I think it doesn't happen because general purpose things are hard to, they're really ill-suited for survival. And then when you're specific purpose, you're prone to lots of errors. So I don't think there's going to be planet eaters anytime soon.
I don't think it was the planet eater scenario so much as the idea that once something became sentient, it would immediately design something beyond itself, and that you would get a cascade of self-perfecting machine intelligences that would go over the horizon before you knew what was going on.
I think that, and this is the theme of the next bio conference, which will be the sponsorship will be held in Australia, is symbiogenesis. That every life form contains the code of the previous ones and modules, like the cell absorbing
the mitochondria,
and the things are built that way. And so, for instance, human life as an organism is a bolus of biological organisms surrounded by metabiological forms called culture, and that is in fact, there's a way to really generate a Frankenstein that's separate from all that. It's always going to contain the errors and the powers of the previous. Now, of course, if we generate nanite lichens that are code based that are living in the solar system, they'll be so simple, it'll be like a slime ball. And wouldn't achieve consciousness complexity. They would achieve the ability to survive on an Oort cloud surface and evolve through error and process over probably tens of thousands of years, reach a certain, but they may evolve to become giant coral-like slime balls, just simply consume resources, because that's what life seems to do when it enters a new ecosystem, consume a lot.
But doesn't it also tend to modify the ecosystem to make it easier on itself? And that when at 1,000 megahertz for 10,000 years, you don't really know what you're going to come back and find.
Yeah, I guess I agree, and I think that what would happen in around 2040 or 50, the transmissions between the organisms, the biotes, suddenly will not be interpretable anymore. For the first few years, they will be spreading across objects. Even asteroids and bits and pieces of dust this big is enough for a colony. And as long as it's got certain ingredients and it's facing the sun, so you'll be able to actually track and understand, and then suddenly the messaging that like Tom Ray's Tierra will get so you can't understand it anymore. And there's no way for anyone to interpret what communication's about. They'll understand fundamental sort of operating system calls. Won't be running Windows, but that the organisms we make in kind of housekeeping, but there will be a meta language that evolves.
That will be contextualized for the organism.
Yeah, and it'll be like bird calls that evolves, and that will be the moment where we have first contact with. In 2 weeks, there's a conference called Contact 16, which is the 16th annual kind of Jim Finnero's conference. It's anthropologists and space scientists and science fiction writers that meet every year and talk about this kind of stuff. This is what I'm going to talk about.
Where will it be held?
It's in San Jose, and they had NASA Ames one day for the whole day.
And I'm going.
You're going.
The three NASA guys came out, and I was so impressed. I went to the summit, a cleaning operation, right? And he was over at our neighbors, right? He lives behind steel gates. And this guy is like me, was busy, generating money for people. We've been meeting for 4 hours. We get a phone call. NASA, we're coming. We sent the email. We said we weren't coming, but we were coming. We had to be there. And so we got a man to ride on those these steel gates and drag them back if they show up. But he came back before. Those guys were so tough. Our friend Dominic, he said, these guys have got their hip detectors out.
Well, there's a lot of study going on of the genetics that controls birdsong and how it localizes and what's actually going on, and it begins to look like there's a pretty seamless process right straight through to complex language, but it's just a mutation of this signal-generating impulse.
And this, I think, language will tell us the day when we have something not necessarily sentient, but something that is no longer of anything we can understand. And it will be from that point on an attempt to contact this mass, this bolus that will be in the ring around the solar system, and it will be tracked, and it will become the second Terran ecosystem. And they'll do work to support us. They'll render down comets and feed mass drivers or whatever they're supposed to do. But there will be this, like any good farmer with his seeds and his crops, there'll be a lot of unpredictability where they go.
These nano-colonizations of Earth cloud material, but originally is established for mineral recovery?
Probably. For construction, or for fuel construction,
Why the outer solar system? Why not the asteroid belt?
There's not enough elements, a variety of elements. I think the Jovian system is going to be...
That's where the action is.
That's where the action is.
So many interesting satellites and just so much incredible electrodynamics and magnetodynamics in that system.
If you want to do anything to Mars, you've got to drop a whole lot of water onto it.
But they're obsessed with Mars for some reason.
It's kind of, I think it's in this state. But NASA, again, I think if you picked any planet that was reachable in reasonable budgets and spacecraft sizes, Mars is it. I mean, Venus is kind of a lost cause.
No reason to go there.
You know, to map it, they mapped it to the radar mapping. It was very good. Mercury is too strange and small. It's basically a moon. It has an atmosphere that forms in 20 seconds when the sun comes up. The atmosphere is 4 inches high and then it freezes on the other side. And it's a 4-hour day. So Mercury's not.
But it is tidally locked to the sun, so you do have this interzone, right?
You know, the sun's half the size of the sky.
Right.
But Mars has got enough stuff. It's got volcanoes and old oceans, I guess, and ice caps. And the next one out is Jupiter. It's too hard to get to.
And then Rookwood.
They're gonna drop Galileo into the Ionian atmosphere in August.
Are they?
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's a really crippled space. Actually, Galileo is an example of early bio. It's a model. They launched. I remember seeing Galileo being packaged to be launched on the shuttle. And this was the shuttle after Challenger, so it never shipped out of JPL. And I remember I went to JPL to see the spacecraft get crated up. And the high gain antenna, which was this great big mesh, and it was like a TV satellite dish. It's all folded up. And when they did launch it 3 years later, it never opened.
So instead of huge bit stream and bandwidth and all kinds of power, they had to work with some...
The low gain antenna size of a pizza pie. Well, they had to slingshot around.
The big one just didn't work?
You're right.
Yeah, they slingshot around. Well, the mistake was the following. It's really interesting. When the shuttle blew up, NASA was no longer permitted to carry liquid-fueled upper stages in the cargo bay, which were considered too dangerous. They had to carry solid fuel. It's safer, but it packs very little punch. Well, it doesn't generate much. It's thrust about a third. So they had to design a new way to get to Jupiter, which they would go around Venus twice and steal some of the angular momentum of Venus by slingshotting around it, coming back again and getting faster. They're stealing from the planets. And then they passed the Earth twice. And on the way into the sun, the high gain antenna, which was still wrapped up, got heated and flexed and shrunk and flexed and shrunk. It was never designed to be going to the inner solar system. It was supposed to go straight out on the Express.
Yeah.
And when they tried to open up on the second time, it came out like this.
It was a screw up.
It was a huge screw up. And so the mission planner said, it's $2 billion down the tube and for congressional hearings and we'll scrap it, or we figured to cut something out. So on the way to Jupiter, they did its brain because it has an operating system and software is very configurable. And they changed Galileo's brain to think differently, process differently, and see differently, and hear differently. By the time it got to Jupiter, even with this tiny little pizza pie dish, it had a re-entry vehicle, this sort of saucer-like pod that would be dropped into the Jovian atmosphere. They'd never be able to do that in their lifetime. It's one life to lose that. And they got to the Jovian system, and by that time it had learned to see in these jail bar method. It would take strips out of the sky, and then the ground controllers would say, look, there's more rings going across. Or now take smaller strips and compress them as much as you can and then send them, trickle them to us. And so they couldn't change the hardware, but they could change the software. And Galileo was sort of a very early 20th century metaphor of the visual buyout, moving out, being transmitted massless, more evolved into a receiver.
It was smarter when it got there.
Smarter when it got
left.
there, when it left.
So then it all made it?
Yeah, it's been in orbit for 2.5 years.
But they had to stream these pictures back instead of in real time. It takes months for the data to come back.
Yeah, it's like 600 baud. No, it's on 8 bits a minute.
It's something crazy.
Yeah. But they've done fantastic science. They dropped the probe, they ran the recorder, and they recorded. The probe went down to the Jovian atmosphere, down to level 9, like that, and collapsed because of the pressure. It was on chutes. And now they're going to do a close approach It's only 4 times higher than the highest volcanic plume above Io, because Io has sulfur volcanoes. And they're going to do only 4 times, they're going to graze the top of the volcanic plume and it may not survive. But they're going to try to do as much as they can and get the best. And it may just sort of burn it, destroy it.
But it's like journey from being let go to being burned is all taped and that comes back.
Yes,
Right.
bit by bit, and it's been in orbit, and the Jovian system's like its own solar system. It's been in orbit for 3 years, 3.5, 4 years, just sweeping by different moons.
But what you really need up there is several tons of state-of-the-art imaging equipment and all kinds of fancy steering engines, and what an interesting system.
Yeah.
This mission to Saturn is pretty ambitious.
Cassini, Cassini's the last big heavy mission, 6 tons of the spacecraft weighs.
And it's going to drop a thing into the atmosphere of Titan that will land on the surface. And
Titan is a Saturn moon.
Titan has the only moon with an atmosphere.
there may be methane, hydrocarbon oceans
With
on Titan.
house-sized tar blocks in the greatest surfing in the solar system. 600-foot
On
wave.
tar? Or on water?
It's like Solaris Titan. It's a really strange world.
Yeah, it's an oddball. And yet, and the funny thing, all of it, our moon, we're an oddball. Our moon is way out of proportion. It's way too big. That's why they think now that our moon is here because of a massive collision. There's no way the Earth could have captured something the size of the moon, so it had to have been a very bad hair day.
A Mars-sized object crashed into the
And it
Earth,
separated.
Melted. All the ejecta.
stuff up into orbit,
And then it
condensed into this kind of system.
And where we're going, and hopefully in
condensed to our moon.
Yeah.
the biotic group goes back through time. We go to fossil sites. We went to the Cambrian fossils of Persia Shale, which were the first weird creatures that had body parts. And then we saw the human fossils in Cambridge, England, the professors in the modern day. And the next trip we're going to go back to 3.5 billion years ago to Western Australia, where you have 2 interesting things. You have the oldest evidence of life is certainly
The stromatolites.
stromatolites and bacterial chemical traces. But the stromatolites are these towers that were the smokestack polluters of the Precambrian. They're colonial forms with mushy tops that have blue-green algae on top. Because if you went back to the Earth then, you'd have to wear a spacesuit because there's no oxygen. And so these things lived around all the continental margins of these towers, and they pumped oxygen out into the atmosphere. It was very poisonous, very toxic substance. And in Shark Bay at Hamlin Pool, if you lie down at night next to where the strongs are, there's this last remaining living stromatolite colony. You get high on the oxygen they're putting out. They're putting out so much.
There's a living colony.
There's a living
And
colony.
what are its sides made of?
It's
all
made as hard
algae?
as rock.
Okay.
What happens is the top is this mushy layer photosynthesizing up to 3 billion individuals per square inch. And then underneath there's, it's colonial. It would have been the only thing that you could see with your own eyes that was obviously alive for 2 billion years of Earth's history. Then underneath there's chemosynthetic stuff that basically the stromatolites sucked iron oxide and calcium out of the atmosphere and built these towers are below it. The ocean levels would rise and fall in these tides, and these towers supported the top of the pond. And they're hard as rock. And half the iron ore in the world is stromatolites. Those are like bodies. Life made the continents.
Iron ore?
So the earliest life on Earth built the American Railroad.
That's right. That's right. That was a biological process. It was not
The accretion of iron.
iron and not oxidized iron.
Uh-huh.
So what happened is the stromatolites pumped and pumped and pumped. They're algal mats is what they're called, but these are mats on a stick. And they pumped and pumped and pumped, and then at 1.8 billion years ago, this sudden fantastic thing happened, the oxygen holocaust, where the oxygen levels just climbed into the stratosphere and poisoned out. Well, Earth's been through many mass extinctions, but this one was a real horrific one because any cell, single cell organism that could not handle incoming high densities of O2, which is very poisonous, basically ripped the cells apart. And so there was this mass extinction, and there were a few cells that had absorbed these things called mitochondria that could absorb the oxygen and turned it into an energy factory.
1 in trillions of cells.
Yeah,
But they then, all present life is traced back to the survivors of that challenge.
when you go jogging or something, and suddenly your body runs out of oxygen, the cells and your muscles switch back to the old system of metabolizing chemosynthetically. You get lactic acid and it makes you sore because you're going back to the ancient system before mitochondria to get energy quick, but at a price. And so stromatolites, there's this tiny pond they found. It's very saline, and they're there. They're there, and they're 3 billion years old. 3 billion years in the same place.
Fine, thank you.
And we're going to go there and say,
this is first life.
this is the first significant.
Well,
It's a colony,
It's
and
the
it's
first
not
colonial,
even a cellular.
okay.
And stromatolites go back to 3.5 billion years, and the earliest evidence of life is 3.86 billion years, so they're very close to. And that the meteorite impacts stopped on about 3.9. So life actually popped up pretty quickly after the.
Within 100 million years after the cometary infall ceased.
For water, and you didn't have the surface of the Earth getting all molten every once in a while because something hit it too hard. But we're going to thank the stromatolites for giving us oxygen and apologize for the fact that we're putting all the CO2 back.
But plants like CO2.
But yeah, Earth of 2 billion years ago was really weird because chances are the oceans were brown because they were full of the continents had no plants to hold the land together. So the outwash was 8 times higher or more of huge river systems, of braided river systems pouring off the continents. Brown oceans, the Himalayas and the Rockies are mountains that will never appear again because there's never going to be that kind of deposition again. They're unique. They're creations of the fact that, well, they're full of life, and they're finding more and more now that life and water are the reason we have plate tectonics in the first place, and that we have mountain ranges.
Why do life and water drive plate tectonics?
They think that, well, there's several sort of interlocking factors. One is that water lubricates. It allows this kind of continuous movement. Water also absorbed a lot of the crap that came through volcanism early in the Earth's history, maybe for comet impacts sprayed the oceans. And that was a big sponge that damped up all this horrible, junky, toxic stuff coming out of the bottoms of the oceans. So it created a cleaner, not a clean, but a cleaner atmosphere, which in turn supported rain, which in turn supported all the outwash. And life sealed the continents in this hyper sea of roots coming out of the ocean and sealed all that land in so that the outflow of the erosion hasn't been all what it used to be. So future generations of mountains will be quite different. But now, in the last 2 years, they've discovered this fantastic, they discovered these black smokers in the mid-80s with huge hot water full of sulfates and stuff pouring out of the bottom of the ocean, and there's tons of life living around it, eating chemicals, not needing sunlight. Bacteria and tube worms and crabs and
2 worms up to 6 feet long.
And that's eating the pollution.
It's eating the pollution, and they were always wondering if life evolved around one black smoker, they don't last long. They kind of go out after a while. How did it get all across the planet? Because all the black smokers have about the same kind of life. And they found these things called super plumes, which are underwater Mount St. Helens that happen in water. So think of Mount St. Helens as a massive ash thing. Well, it happens under the ocean too. You get this blowout that happens of hot water. It's the same as a pyroclitic ash explosion. It comes out into up to 12 to 15 miles across, boluses of hot water that's very hot. And they come blowing off as a mushroom cloud bottom of the ocean, and then they get caught by waves, by currents, and carried for hundreds of miles, or over 1,000 miles. And they're full of life forms, and that have been carried up in this express bus system. And then they're raining back down
on other plumes.
Another plume. So this kind of plume, super plume system may have been the engine that created and sort of transported life around constantly. So volcanism, underwater volcanism, are roots. That's why we like jacuzzis.
Volcanoes.
Underwater volcanoes.
Underwater volcanoes.
Yeah, the world's largest underwater volcano is about 22 miles that way.
Yeah.
And the world's largest earthquake in 1998-7 was an 8.1 earthquake on that mountain. When they went down with bathyscaphic stuff afterwards, they said that the entire area had been totally rearranged, but they couldn't recognize it. It's only 2,000 feet below the surface there, having risen 12,000 feet. The ocean is 16,000 or 14,000 feet deep there.
If you ever get to Mars, you'll see the great granddaddy of all solar system volcanoes. Olympus Mons, 80,000 feet. The top sticks out of the atmosphere, so the atmosphere in the caldera is different. And they have a land emission in there or something.
I didn't realize that.
It's a giant.
Yeah, the Hawaiian Shield volcanoes are the closest thing to it on the Earth.
Well, I've heard that when I was at Volcano Park, the volume encompassed by Mauna Loa is you could fit all the Sierra Nevada inside it. So in effect, it's the single largest structure on the planet. It was created by one process.
Right. Yeah, it's the world's largest mountain by volume, and if you measure it from its seabed floor, it's the world's tallest mountain because it's 13,000 feet above the sea, but 16,000 feet it rises from the ocean there.
The living ones are great. And there's a theory now as to why there's a hot spot under here. It's some kind of a constructive harmonic that's going on. It's actually breaking up the crust. And there may be one on the other side. Maybe look.
At the exact antipodes of Hawaii?
Yeah, it may be lower. That's bad for everyone.
And so, what are they creating inside?
Creating sort of the greatest products that their imaginations can generate.
And how is it to help ourselves, or is it to?
I think it's kind of a semi-conscious push for the drive that human beings have had to build and to make things, make life, and create. We're creating tool-making things. Perhaps they don't know why, but they'll make the next phase.
Mm-hmm. Pay attention to the details.
Yeah. I'm telling Dave, the maker of the world, that we were impressed.
Yeah, we were greatly impressed. Thank him very much, and tell him that we'll have a go at it.
Good night.
I hope to see him in the next while. Gosh, I saw a digital camera in Mexico where the guy could just flip a switch and he could shoot a 90-second JPEG or MPEG movie.
Wow.
It was incredible.
It's getting, and you can edit it.
And he only paid like $500 for this camera, which is what I paid for mine a few years ago, and it doesn't do shit.
The way it is with this stuff, and the speed of computers now, you can't really run full horizontal video, so you just gotta do segments, right?
Right.
But if you play segments, the dialogue can be patched in, and you get different angles and stuff like that.
It's a church
And it's
service.
interesting, that's what's cool.
Church service.
Church service going on in one of the homes and people wanting to come.
Virtual Christianity. I don't know about
Virtual religiosity.
that. Virtual religion. That new time religion.